After many requests to do an updated top 5 top tier jets in War Thunder, today we are finally going to get around to doing it. And yes, here at number 5 I have the F-104S ASA. This is kind of a head scratcher. Here at number 4 we of course have the MiG-23 MLD/MLA. The Mirage 2000 is a plane that the F-14 at number 2 could maybe be a little bit controversial. And of course, most of you probably saw this coming at number 1. Yes, the J-7E, my favorite top tier in the game. So some of you out there really like the JA-37C Viggen. And to those of you, I'm going to tell you today, you'd better take a seat because you and I, well, we need to have a little chat. If you're one of the normal people that plays War Thunder and you just happen to like a particular vehicle, maybe because you think it's cool in real life, or maybe you just have a lot of fun playing it, that's absolutely fine. I'm not here to hate on what you enjoy doing on the game. Now to the other side of the Viggen players on this game, these weird, mind-boggling cultists that stand behind this plane as being like the best top tier in the entire game. They will tell you that this plane can out-dogfight literally everything. I remember specifically thinking back to a video when the F-14 was first coming out into the game, and of course it had that busted flight model. It still does have that busted flight model. And I was talking about it and my concerns with how really strong that flight model is. And there was a comment that says, the F-14 is no match for the JA-37C Viggen. And that was one of the funniest comments I've ever had on my channel to date, given the context. These Viggen fanboys will say that the J-37 Viggen handily, easily out-dogfights the J-7E. They will say that it beats the Mirage 2000. You name the plane and the Viggen is going to be able to beat it in a 1 versus 1. I have no idea where these delusions come from, but it honestly has provided quite the entertainment over the last few months, and really there's probably no sign of it slowing down. When the Gripen comes out, I bet there's going to be the same band of fanboys kind of swarming around that plane too, swearing that it's the next coming of Christ. And we'll have to deal with that when it comes. This topic actually fascinates me so much that I've decided I'm going to make a documentary on the Viggen. And to do that, I have a little bit of mock dogfights with the Viggen to just kind of show some points of what the Viggen can and can't do in a dogfight. And for the F-14, for example, I had one of my buddies who is not as good as me at the game. And he will tell you that. He'll be the first to tell you that. He hops into the F-14, I hop into a Viggen. When we take equal loadouts, so we carry the same amount of missiles, same amount of fuel, I cannot beat him. There is nothing I can do to his plane. He turns inside of me, he outrates me, he outclimbs me, he outenergies me, he has more thrust, you name it, the dude is just going to be pulling energy out of his cheeks. There was nothing I could have done to him in the dogfight. So we take it back and we say, okay, well, maybe if the Viggen is clean and the F-14 has a few missiles left on it, then maybe the Viggen has an advantage. And while it was easier for me to keep up with him, I'd still get rinsed by the F-14 even though it wasn't even clean. And of course, as you would probably guess, when the F-14 is clean and the Viggen is also clean, it's again no contest. The F-14 wins with one hand and its eyes closed. Without any missiles on the plane, the F-14 can sustain a 0.8 Mach rate at 10G with the wings extended. Now think about that for a second. Think about what a 0.8 Mach 10G rate fight would look like. You would be getting absolutely slammed. Now, of course, this doesn't always happen in ARB. It rarely happens in ARB, and you're rarely even going to find an F-14 pilot that's actually competent in ARB. Not only that, but the F-14 with combat flaps, granted that it's a clean plane and at least a similar load to the Viggen, it will literally pull inside of the Viggen in a quote-unquote one-circle fight. That's something that the Viggen players often tote, that the Viggen is so good in these one-circle fights, and they are rather unrivaled unless it's something like a Mirage 2000, and this is just not the case. The Viggen is kind of unique as far as deltoids go in that it actually holds energy kind of well, especially at high speeds, and what this means is you're not pulling as much angle of attack as some of the other deltoids do. Now, yes, it is still a lot of angle of attack. It is still a delta in the end of the day, but it is not as extreme as the other deltas, and this comes with a couple of benefits and a couple of downsides too. Benefits, of course, being you're not going to be getting as slow as quickly as, say, you would be in something like a Fear or a Mirage. But some of the downsides is you're not going to be able to get your nose on target as quickly as those planes either. So everything has trade-offs. And the Viggen has always been a really good jack-of-all-trades plane, but the problem is, it's just a master of none. The F-14, on the other hand, is a master of everything. With the wings extended and using flaps, it literally does pull inside of the Viggen's turn. It will outrate the Viggen. It will never lose energy before the Viggen does, because at the lower end speeds, the Viggen does start pulling a lot of AOA, and it starts becoming like a traditional delta wing, and you're going to have a hard time keeping your speed and not just stalling and floating in the sky like a kite. Now, of course, I will say that the F-14 has the best flight performance in the entire game of any jet in the game, hands down. But with the specific example of the Viggen, the J-7E beats it even easier, just because it does everything that the Viggen does, but better. There's literally not a single thing that the Viggen does better than the J-7E, except maybe hold energy a little bit better around the Mach 0.9 area, and that's simply just because it compresses a whole hell of a lot more than the J-7 does. That being said, we are of course talking about the two strongest flight performance planes in the game. There are a lot of planes that the Viggen will actually out dogfight, I'll give it that. Its flight performance is not bad by any means, it's just compared to what people will say about it, and the things they're willing to just straight up lie about just because they don't know any better. Not because they're really trying to lie, but it's just kind of comical what they will say about the Viggen. You know, MiG-21 bis, F4s, literally any Phantom, the MiG-23Ms, the Viggen is going to win that fight pretty much every single time. There is plenty of top tier planes that the Viggen will be able to out dogfight, but the J7 and the F14 are simply not one of them. I'm sorry, there is no way you can twist that into saying that the Viggen ever has any kind of advantage. It just doesn't. Like I said earlier though, the Viggen is a jack of all trades plane, master of none. Its flight performance is still extremely good. In fact, the reason I liked it so much back in the day is because it was pretty much good enough at everything to where if you were competent at playing the game, you could usually bridge the gaps between performance of any given aircraft that you might be facing just with your skill level alone, because while one plane might outturn you, your plane turns just enough for it to really not matter in the end because you're better. While one plane might be able to outrun you, you will be able to keep up with it enough to where it's not going to actually get away from you, and so on and so on. There's all kinds of things that the Viggen does well, at least just well enough for it to not really matter in the end of the day in the hands of a competent player in a normal Air RB game. But in the end of the day, the ultimate downfall for the Viggen in November of 2022 is that its missile kit is absolutely atrocious for today's top tier standard. It has the absolute worst SAR missiles you can have at top tier, the E2. These things barely track, they barely pull. The AIM-7F is actually more responsive off of the rail than the E2 is now, and they have very limited range. They will more often than not lose track of the target that you're shooting at just by it moving a little bit or chaffing a little bit. And unfortunately, sometimes they do what the AIM-9Gs used to do and simply just fly past their target. Even though everything's looking fine, you look like you're tracking fine, and then once it gets to the target, it just kind of whiffs and fly right by it. It has AIM-9Ps, which are just AIM-9Js, and AIM-9Js are pretty much in the same boat. It could be argued that AIM-9Js aren't necessarily the worst top-tier missile, but they are definitely amongst the worst top-tier missiles. These things barely pull at all. They certainly don't pull like they used to. If you guys remember AIM-9Js maybe 6 months ago, probably not even. I don't know when these things changed so drastically to where they kind of just feel like they barely pull, but they don't. And having such a small little Seeker FOV there to where you can't really give the missile any lead, that's a huge problem when your missile isn't going to pull. This is without a doubt the worst kit I've played recently in top tier, and it becomes a real pain in the ass to actually try to get kills with missiles this weak in current top tier meta. So where does it even come from? Why do people think that the Viggen is as good as it is? And the answer is just anecdotal experience. Guys, when you are talking about how good or bad an aircraft is, or what it can and can't do, do not, please do not, use your anecdotal experience as support for a given statement, because Just because you've been able to out dogfight little Timmy in his F-14 who used his mom's credit card to buy the F-5C and then grind for 3 months just to get the F-14, has absolutely no idea what he's doing, and you slam him in a reversal, that does not mean that your Viggen is better than the F-14. Player skill is a huge part of what you perceive as the better plane in a normal ARB match, and it's going to take a little bit more digging to actually get down to the bottom of it and find the truth. Sweden mains, please feel free to leave your angry molding comments down below. I will be looking forward to reading them. I can't wait to upload this Viggen documentary here in the near future. I hope you guys are excited for that. I think it'll be pretty interesting. Until then, I'll see you guys later.